Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? It's time to start the meeting. So if we could all just settle down and get ready. I do want to introduce everyone up at the front table. Obviously, there's name badges in front of them. The guys in the back can't see. So I'm going to let you guys stand up and introduce yourself so the people know who they are. But I'm Tom, K3TKW. I really do appreciate everyone coming. I appreciate these guys taking time out of their busy schedule. If you're in this hobby, this table here is probably the most powerful table that I can think of. Whether you like the ARRL, the FCC, or the ARRC, you gotta work with these guys. You shouldn't be, or you shouldn't be in this hobby. So, how this actually started is we had some interference, blah blah blah. I'm not going to go backwards. Came across to my GMRS repeater. I put a GMRS repeater up 3.5 years ago, hoping to get people in the ham to come over to the other repeaters. Found out it was a little bit different. My version of GMRS is it's truck drivers now that are grading up to a UHF repeater, and they need to be educated. They need to know how to talk to the repeater, so forth and so on. And that's the process I've been going through 3.5, 4 years on this. And it's tough, but if we don't teach them, they'll never know. So long story short, we had some interference. Everyone knows, blah, 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 this and that. Crossed into my repeater. I'm done. I'm a Shingara. Crazy. Called these guys. They told me the procedures. Followed them. Got, and you know who you are, 5 or 6 guys here from Harrisburg. Listened to what these guys told me to do. We did our homework. 10 months. And I have no filter, no patience. I'm yelling at Curlo every day. What the hell? But I've learned. So that is how this meeting actually started. It took us about 11 months. But working with this group, we solved a major problem that was in this area for 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 different repeaters. So if anything you take from this meeting, working with these guys will get you a lot better results than what I say. Right now, we get a group of hams and you ask the question, or someone, there's a instance that's coming up and someone says, well, the FCC's involved. There's 2 replies. Screw the FCC, okay. Or, well, if they're involved, we don't need to do anything. Wrong and wrong. And we learned. Follow these guys, listen to what they do, and we had to do a lot of the legwork. That's our jobs as control operators, repeater owners, licensees, broadcasters. Get the background, turn it over to these guys, and they will take care of it. If you don't want to do that, shut your mouth. Close down your repeater. Don't get involved. So that's what happened here. And these guys really did a hell of a job. I think, what, in 10 months? 3 or 4? Pretty damn good. So that's what this meeting is. That's what it came by. Enough for me. I know you don't want to talk to me. So we're just going to start. I guess you want to be first? All right, we're going to turn it over. And I do believe once you guys do your thing, you are going to stay around for some questions and answers, I hope. So that's going to be good.
I'm hoping for questions and answers because there's going to be no death by PowerPoint, even though that's my specialty. And I typically want to know what you folks want to know, so question and answer is going to be good. My name is Bob Familio. My call sign is K3RF, K3 radio frequency. I've been a radio ham licensed since January of 1967, and yes, it's changed my life. My day job is practicing law, but the rest of my job is representing ARRL members and hams that aren't members because the league, the American Radio Relay League, some of you know what that is the National Association for Amateur Radio. And our charge is to represent the interest of hams, our members, but of course all hams, for all kinds of different things, whether it be spectrum management, spectrum advocacy, antenna rights, which is a big one. I'm a volunteer counsel. See, I've got a multicolored badges here because if you like purple, I've got the purple volunteer counsel badge. I've had orange, I've had green badges, and now I have a red one. I used to be Eastern Pennsylvania section manager. Perhaps some of you recall my claim to fame there and my 5 minutes of fame that Andy Warhol, I think, said we all have 15 minutes of fame. I used up 5 minutes when I flew the section in 2014 for field day. I think I flew to the Harrisburg site. That was a long time ago. And then I was vice director, thanks to you that were voting. was a three-way race, 3 section managers actually, and I am now have the pleasure of being the director for the Atlantic Division for the American Radio Relay League. We cover Canada down to Washington, D.C. That's northern New York, western New York, western and eastern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, all of Delaware, all of Maryland, and D.C. And that would be my territory anyway. But I'm looking forward to engaging in the conversation. I don't have any prepared remarks. But as I said, you give a microphone to a lawyer, you're in trouble. I'll talk for half an hour, and then when you leave, you'll say, what the hell did he say? And is he going to send us a bill? Because in my business, we charge by the hour. Yep, 6 minutes already. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, whether it's from ARRL members or otherwise, because for many of us, amateur radio is kind of a way of life. In a sense, to some people that sounds silly. It's a hobby. Although I would argue that nowhere in the FCC rules at Part 97 does it call amateur radio a hobby. I had the good fortune or lack of good fortune to explain that to the chief judge of the Third Circuit United States Court of Appeals in an antenna appeal that took 4 years. Jeff knows about that. And he said, Mr. Familio, your client is it's just a hobby. Why do you want 100 and some foot tower? You don't talk back to a judge and explain why they're wrong, because that never goes well for you. But amateur radio is a service, and I want to remind everybody before I pass the microphone to the next victim that if you look at the FCC rules, which is where we should all start when we have arguments, Part 97, I think it's Rule 100 or 105. It's 100 or 101, and there's several parts, A through E or F. I've never memorized it. Perhaps I should. The reasons for amateur radio, the public service, have a pool of trained operators, be able to provide emergency communications in time of national emergency. It's all there. Foster doesn't use the word STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but if you read it, that's what it means, to have people that know something about radio because we serve the country. Whether it's the old-time radio we know, AM, CW, single sideband, or the new stuff, pardon me, that we're doing, we need a pool of trained operators, and we have them here in this room. And I think the last one is to foster international goodwill, and I think that's probably still on the table. But keep that in mind as you enjoy the rights that we have, and it's a privilege, actually, in the amateur radio service. Let me give this to Jeff, because I've got this wolf hung here, if you know what that is. Some of you that don't will explain it later, and if I don't shut up, he'll use this on me.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Jeff DiPolo, calls Whiskey November 3 Alpha. And unlike Bob, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't talk much. I'm an engineer. I tend to be quiet. So you're not going to hear a whole lot from me today. I'm here, I guess, wearing a couple of small hats. One is the ARRL Eastern Pennsylvania Technical Coordinator. And then also I'm involved with the Area Repeater Coordination Council, ARCC. I've been involved in repeater coordination for, I guess, over 30 years at this point. As one of the founding officers of the organization, and currently serve as the Vice President of Coordination and Database Manager. And when I'm not doing ham radio, I have an engineering firm that caters to the wireless and broadcast engineering fields. We do everything from licensing to design and construction of broadcast and wireless communication facilities, equipment installation, maintenance, repairs, AM, FM, microwave, pretty much if it deals with RF, we like to deal with it. That said, I'm going to stick around for questions. I don't really have anything prepared either. I think we'll be turning over the microphone to our guests of honor here, and they'll be taking up the bulk of the time of the meeting, and hope you'll give them your undivided attention. And I want to thank Tommy again for arranging for all this, and hope everyone walks away with something from all of us up here. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me without this thing? Yes, sir. All right, cool. Oh, that's right. That's right. You're recording. Hey, hi, Mom. My name's Al, and I'm one of the agents down here in the Columbia field office. I'm the guy who does like a lot of stuff at nighttime and gets out there and helps with you, works with you guys on a lot of other cases. Some of you all have contacted me and worked with me offline of a few things we got to resolve, and that's the purpose, to let you know that because we're a bunch of hams there. I've been licensed since '79, and after a 20-year career in the military and special forces, radio's been there for me forever. Now look what I get to do now. I get to do some cool stuff. And coming into the commission from an amateur side, there's a lot of stuff I did not know. So it's always learning, and the things you might understand that's out there, and the rules and the regs, there's more to it than this, the subpart 95. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But I'm gonna hear got a few things go on with my director to present with you guys. But PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint, no, did that in the military, and I ain't doing that again. But I'll be around for a while. Dave?
Hi, everybody. My name is David Dombrowski. I've been working for the commission since I got out of Temple University, graduated as an engineer, and I started in a training program, got hired in the media services, processing FM applications, and I said, man, I can't see myself paper pushing my whole life. So a job opened up in Philadelphia, my hometown, and I was lucky to get back into that office right before they were doing a modernization where they closed a number of offices and laid off people. That was the first one. I survived that one, and I got to meet a lot of you guys. So it's been a long time seeing some faces. This was my backyard. I did the enforcement work in Harrisburg in Pennsylvania. I loved traveling out to Pittsburgh mostly. It was like my assigned area. And so we did a lot of great casework over the years. Well, when 2016 happened, I lost my job as a district director at that point. I was the manager of the Philadelphia office. I was lucky to get hired as the manager for the region. So I managed 4 offices, Columbia, Maryland, Boston, Chicago, and New York. That's Region 1. And I go down to Maryland a couple times a week. It used to be 4. Thank goodness for the pandemic, I was able to get telework out of it. And I get a couple of days of telework and 2 days down there. So it's been a little bit easier on myself. But I'm in management, and I don't go down the road much, but I do once in a while, and I enjoy the field work. So thanks for inviting me to participate in this. I have to apologize to everybody, especially Tom, who we told probably just a few weeks before September's event that we were not coming. It was because it takes a lot to get approval to come out here. If you know government, everything's got to get approved from the higher ups. It's got to get approved by the chairwoman's office, this presentation. So they were going through my presentation notes, and that's what took so long. So, but we're glad we're here, and I thank my team for helping me out today too and coming with me. Laura?
Hi there. I'm Laura Smith, and I'm the person you all hate. Yeah. What David didn't tell you is David and I started at the agency at the same time, and that was 33 years ago. So we've been around for a day or two. I am in charge of amateur enforcement for the agency, but quite often I help Al out with the GMRS cases. So you guys hear a lot from me or about me or call me all sorts of names. That's okay. I don't really have a presentation here today. I am here simply to answer any questions you might have, or if Dave has any issues that he wants me to address, I can do so. But I'm going to pass the mic off to the gentleman right here, who is my predecessor in this job and who used to be my personal friend until he recommended that I take this job, and now I hate him. So this is Mr. Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I was told to go last so the room gets cleared out and they don't have to pay overtime. But everybody at this table is a legend in my mind, and you have no idea what workload is of the FCC. And if you haven't done so, go to the FCC site and look at Daily Digest every couple of days for a week, and you'll see all the massive things they have to deal with that don't even relate to RF. So I have a great deal of respect for all of them. And Jeff DiPaolo, I don't know if you know it, you are a legend. I remember you when I was at the FCC, and if you had a repeater problem, the way to make it go away is call Jeff, and truly a legend. And there's another person here that's a legend too. I always dog him, no matter where he goes, no matter what hamfest. But when I was doing amateur enforcement at the FCC, I was also doing land mobile interference cases that the coordinators couldn't solve. And so I talked to a lot of land mobile dealers, and I usually dreaded calling them because it would either go well or go sour in the first 2 seconds. So we had this case involving Green Communications, and it would look like it was Green's fault. So I called Green, and I got Pete on the telephone and explained to him what it was. And so instead of moaning and bitching and moaning, he said, we'll take care of that this afternoon. And I'm thinking, whoa. So, and then we've been good friends ever since. And so if you ever have a real technical issue like that, Pete is the go-to guy. Other than that, the third row, your license retest exam starts at 3 o'clock. So in the big room down here. And that's all I have. Except I want to say that that's a nice looking shirt. It makes you look intelligent. You should wear that more often.
I need a lot more of them. Sorry. All right, guys. I can't thank these guys enough, and I'm going to keep saying this. Why are you in this hobby if you don't follow the FCC, the ARRL, and these guys here? These guys are leaders. Might not be to our speed. It's never to my speed, but I understood. They taught me a lot. So instead of saying screw the FCC or if they're involved, we don't have to. No, they need our help. You work with these guys, you're going to get results. And that's the lesson I want to take so you guys remember that. Go to your clubs, go wherever you're a part of, whatever. And remember, if you don't help, don't bitch. I mean, you got to get involved and do your homework, and you'll find out that everything will work. So, and again, I can't thank Terry for setting this up. All my guys from Harrisburg helping me out. We didn't have a game plan. We had no clue what was going on, blah, blah, blah. But we knew this was big with these guys here. I do thank every one of you for coming up. I hope you go back to your communities, change the verbiage, and have a little bit more respect and for the ARRL, the FCC, and what these guys do, because it's a crap show out there, and we all know what we hear, so forth and so on. So right now, we really don't have a format, but this is probably your time of it. I guess we'll just pass the mic, and if everyone wants to take a shot at one of these guys, I mean, okay, do you want to do that, Dan?
Hey, we worked so much on this presentation that we at least got to give it. So I just want to talk a little bit about the FCC and give you just our perspective of how to work with you guys, how we take complaints, our priorities, so you get a little bit of understanding. And then we could talk, and Al could take over the mic, and you could talk about some of the rule sections that are pertinent to the amateur and GMRS community. But the FCC, just want to mention some of the priorities, what the main priority of the FCC, it's to ensure competitive framework for our communications sector. We rely a lot on competition. We don't tell companies really how to, like sell companies, what modulation schemes and where to put their equipment. They give them a framework of rules, and we let the competition handle it. We encourage the best use of frequency because it is such a limited resource, and we do that domestically and internationally with all foreign countries. And the big thing is to strengthen our communications infrastructure. So this is a big term now over the last 10 years, that communications is part of our infrastructure, particularly for emergency preparedness. And so we work with our public safety folks, and that's a big priority for ours. We are under the leadership of 5 commissioners, with Jessica Rosenworcel being our chairwoman. She is selected by the president, as all the commissioners are. And there's kind of a balance in power in the FCC leadership, in that there's 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans right now, as the president is Democrat. So can kind of get their agenda through when they vote on rulemakings, because sometimes it comes a little contentious at the times when they're debating whether to push a rulemaking through or not. I'll just mention some of the organizations you may deal with. We are divided into bureaus and offices. Wireless Bureau is the one you get your license through, the Wireless Bureau. So they handle all policies and licensing for land mobile radio services, the microwave, amateur, and broadband frequencies. The Media Bureau, who I used to work for, and so did Laura, we just they handle licensing of the broadcast stations, particularly your cable, TV, FM, and AM. We have our Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Now that's a relatively new in terms of the agency's age since the 1930s. You know, they probably came out of 911 and when we had this term infrastructure to support, we created the Public Safety Bureau, and they handle reliable 911 service, emergency alerting, and first responder communications. An interesting aspect of them is the HFDF Center, High Frequency Direction Finding. They have a system that's installed for decades and is still maintained. They have receivers all over the country and in some of our U.S. territories where they can actually geolocate a source of transmissions below 30 megahertz. They use their services mainly to support the field and any kind of interference complaint or unlicensed operation in those bands below 30 megahertz. And they also support other government agencies, particularly like along your borders and drug trafficking. So pretty interesting system. And then you have the Enforcement Bureau. We have to be the experts in all these radio services because we're out there investigating not only amateur and land mobile, broadcast, cable, you name it, we've come across it over the years. Our division is divided. The Enforcement Bureau, we now have an Office of Field Director. Now, in 2016, we had a modernization happen. It was when they cut this field in half. They reduced the size of the field staff, and they reduced the number of field offices. And that's where I lost my job in Philadelphia, but I got hired into Maryland. So New York covers Pennsylvania. We kind of divided Pennsylvania in half. New York, our office covers Philadelphia and Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and all New Jersey. The guys from Columbia come up and do Harrisburg, West, and Northwest. And so make it a little bit easier to get there because it's just easier. It's an hour and a half from Columbia up into this area. But Mike Rhodes is our field director, and it's great to have that exposure down at headquarters because for years, when I was working in Philadelphia, you talk to another person in the agency, even the commissioners, they didn't know much about the field and what the field does. So having that representation down there has really got a good exposure for the field. You may have, I'm not going to mention all the divisions, but maybe two that you may have seen or heard of. The Telecom Consumer Division, Telecommunications Consumer, they deal with protecting consumers from fraudulent, misleading, and other harmful practices involving telecom, including robocalls. And talk about a fine in a little bit when we talk about sanctions. But robocalls, they were killing my phone, my personal phone, my work phone, and maybe you'll notice a significant reduction in that because of their enforcement work in that area. Spectrum Enforcement Division we work hand in hand with. This team is lawyers and engineers who work on the equipment authorization side. Office of Engineering Technology issues the equipment authorizations. Spectrum Enforcement does the enforcement in this area. So if you have a device out there that seems to have a trend of causing a lot of interference, we investigate it and notice that trend, or you could bring it to us. We'll raise that to the level of a Spectrum Enforcement Division. They will contact the manufacturer and work with them. They may do a letter of inquiry, ask some questions about it. They want to ask about the design of the device, and they want to try to get compliance. They want to get this device off the shelves. We had an antenna, just for example. It was an amplified TV antenna that people installed, and it had a bad solder connection in it. And here that soldering connection resulted in the antenna, maybe a couple years later after ownership, that it started generating spurious emissions in the 800 megahertz band, particularly impacting like our state police. And so we had like 12 to 20, I think it was 12 to 15 cases up in Boston just with the Massachusetts State Police. And we work with the company to get them replaced in that area. Smart meters is another one. It's another big device that caused interference. We had to get replaced. So they work hand in hand with the manufacturers. The enforcement side of it is divided into three regions. Again, I handle Columbia, Boston, New York, and Chicago. My counterpart in the South, it used to be called the South region. It's now called Region 2. That's Diedrich Rubinski. He covers Atlanta, Dallas, Miami, and New Orleans. And then Lark Hadley, and maybe some of you were on his presentation a couple weeks ago on the complaint database. He does Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, Portland, and Honolulu. And we have an incredible team down in equipment in Huron, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. They do our equipment development where they design our direction-finding vehicles. These are covert vehicles. They have all kind of fancy electronics in it. When I got hired into the agency back in the 90s, that equipment would take up the whole front seat, the passenger seat. It's now reduced down to under the armrest, believe it or not. Everything fits under the armrest. So amazing software development by those guys and hardware development. And then we have this incredible team of that's here with me today. Al Furlow. We have a diverse background. Guys come from private industry. We've hired them. Al worked for AT&T. He's a U.S. military, former Green Beret. Oh, you always be a former Green Beret. Yeah. Shannon Gunter, he worked for Motorola before we hired him, and Satya Maruti today. Where's Shannon? Just stand up. Shannon's back there. And so Shannon worked for Motorola before coming here, some great exposure there. And then Satya Maruti. Satya and Al got hired, I think it's 3 years now? I'm kind of, maybe 4? 4 years. They came in together. Satya worked as senior solutions consultant with Globecom, a lot of satellite experience and solutions specialist with Viavi. solutions. So great background for these guys. You have to I was talking at the tables today, you have to have some kind of really experience in terms of a degree. That's hampered a lot of good experience. The guys working in the field want to work for us, but we have to have some kind of educational background or professional licensing in order to be hired as an agent. In terms of priorities, now after the modernization, reduced staff, we can't resolve every complaint. So we had to prioritize things. In the field when I used to work, I used to just take the car out, maybe have one complaint, work that complaint in the area, and then I would just go do different services, inspect a broadcast station, go to a radio tower. I get the owner out there and say, walk me through what's here at the site, what's unlicensed, would find out what's licensed and what's not. Made a lot of good contacts, and that increased in the number of complaints that we received because we had that networking and exposure. But today we're more complaint driven. Public safety being our number one priority, have to respond within 24 hours of a complaint filed by public safety entities. That could be federal, like Coast Guard and FAA, or state, local emergency services. The next level is enterprise wireless. They are commercial providers, like your broadcasters who have commercial interests. Your cellular companies, microwave companies, land mobile. If they have interference, they complain to us. And those complaints usually have to be worked between 2 and 5 days. At least contact it and develop a plan of action. Next is unlicensed operation and operation at variance from the license. So those are the complaints we put at our third tier. Under that is pirate radio. Pirate radio is a big project we've been working on. It's taken a lot of our resources, legal and engineering resources. Under the Pirate Act, a couple years ago, it was Congress that gave us additional authorities to increase the fines against pirate operators. It went from $10,000 a day for a violation to $100,000, and the maximum we could issue for multiple days of operation is not only it was just I think $100,000 it used to be. Now it's a maximum of $2 million, and I'll talk in a minute or two about some of the fines we recently issued. It also gave us additional authority over the property owners. This was huge. We can now go to a property, say, hey, you have a pirate station operating on your rooftop. You have to get them off the air. Otherwise, we're going to consider you as allowing the operation. And once they get that warning letter, they've been taking the stations off the air, and we want to make sure that they don't return to that property or any property that they own. And we haven't seen that happen yet, so that's good. The next level of complaint is the CGB, or Consumer Government Affairs Bureau, consumer complaints. And these are the ones where you would file. They start to come at the lower priority. These are ones that involve reception of broadcast stations, amateur complaints, interference in home electronics equipment, and jamming, to name a few. When those complaints come in, I don't have a responsibility to work all of them. I just don't have the resources. But when we get them, we need information from you in those complaints. Tell us when the interference is happening, how often. Give us some really good details. The frequencies involved, who we think it might be involved, where you're hearing the interference. If you really give us some recordings, you can attach those recordings to the complaint. That really helps us show the interest and the impact that complaint is having on the communities. And we try to decide whether we make a decision based on that, whether to investigate them. Personal radio services is kind of at the bottom, where we have GMRS, Citizens Radio, Broadband, Citizens Band Radio, and multi-use radio services. We used to not do these in around 2016 when we had the modernization. We weren't doing any investigations in these areas. But Mike Rose supports it just like I do, just like Laura knows that if you do, and Riley too, we talked about this at the luncheon recently, if you do a couple violations and investigate some of those complaints, it has this effect of a deterrence, right? And we know that some of these operators are the same ones causing interference to public safety operators. So there's jamming, amateur repeaters and GMRS. They're the same ones doing public safety. So let's hit it down in those low areas as best we can, and we can make an impact to prevent the public safety interference complaints. We have portals to file these complaints online. There is a video done by Lark. He just would. What group was he with? It was last Thursday. So Lark went through the whole process through BDR group and did this presentation on how to file a complaint. But just know we have different complaint portals: public safety, enterprise, and then it's consumer portal. When it comes to amateur complaints, let's talk about that process a little bit. When we receive them, they go right to Laura. All right, Laura gets all of them. And so we funnel them to Laura. Laura tries to handle them. She'll make a decision whether she can handle it herself, maybe a phone call, maybe a warning letter. But if it requires some on-scene investigative work, we have a memorandum of understanding with the ARRL that we use the observers to go out and collect that evidence. And then if they can't get compliance, they'll file a report with us. And then it comes to Laura. And then Laura decides whether to funnel to the field office. Again, I don't think there's one case I've never taken from you. I always, if it's coming from Laura and Laura's asking, we're going to do it. And that has been very beneficial and has been successful in many cases where we've caught the subject violating the rules. We have a very much of equipment, with direction finding vehicles, as I mentioned, that are home built. We have some spectrum analyzer equipment that we can remotely put in there and collect evidence just to get an idea of what the emissions look like. These are cheaper units that we can remote into. It looks at the spectrum. It notifies us when the activity, if a signal exceeds a certain mask, it will notify us, so we can use this for spurious emission problems and get an idea of what the pattern looks like. And that helps alleviate just having an agent sit there and do the monitoring. And we have some portable direction finding equipment, spectrum analyzers, and we also do RF exposure measurements. Amateur community knows well about this. So I've seen, wiring connected to fences and antennas on next to neighbors' properties with no signage. Those are the type of things we're looking at. And we do those field strength measurements also for devices that are putting spurious emissions out. We do some rough field strength measurements to say, hey, we think this exceeds the equipment authorization. We send it over to our spectrum enforcement team. When we do sanctions, we have several levels of sanctions we could take. Warning letters is the first one. We don't need a lot of evidence for a warning letter. We don't need to collect any. We could just base it on a complaint and send a warning letter out. So there's a lot of times we use warning letters. The problem is we're not getting exposure because they're not released to the public. They're actually sent directly to the operator, and you may not be aware of it. So there's a lot of that going on in the background when we get complaints. But if we do send a field agent out, we need to collect the evidence to support a notice. That could be just a warning letter, like a notice of unlicensed operation, or a notice of harmful interference. If the problem continues, then we may issue a notice of apparent liability, which is a fine. Notice of apparent liability says that you willfully and or repeatedly violated the FCC rules. It gives the person who violated the rules an opportunity to respond. They could either pay the fine, ask for a reduction, or they could ask for a payment plan. A lot of times they don't respond. They just ignore them. Well, what happens is we issue a forfeiture order, says now you must pay it because you didn't respond, or we deny the facts that you gave us in the case don't support that we should dismiss this, so we're going to go forth with the violation. After the forfeiture order is issued, they do have an opportunity to appeal, maybe go to hearing. If it has a fine attached to it, it can get sent to the Department of Justice for collection. And we've issued some significant fines recently. Let's talk about some of the ones that EB did as I wrap up here. Robocalls, we had a $300 million fine to a company. Listen to this. This is amazing. In 2021, during a 3-month span, 5 billion robocalls are made to 5 million people on just the auto warranty calls. I was getting them a tremendous amount of those. So, yeah, we've seen a reduction in 99% of those calls, apparently. So hopefully that's impacted your life, too. 911 outages. A company, I guess, did backhaul for a 911 service, maybe a 911 center. They got fined $867,000 because they failed to provide network reliability to support the 911 system. Pirate radio, we had several fines in the amount of $2 million for multiple operators in New York. Johnny Peralta for La Mia Radio in the Bronx. Dexter Blake for Linkage Radio in Mount Vernon. Matthew Bowman for 999 HD in Brooklyn. These stations have been on for over a decade. Long time. And actually, right now today, I could say they're all off the air. So I think they're running scared with the new authority that we have. And hopefully it will in a couple years, it will work and we'll see a tremendous impact on the broadcast industry. And then in terms of the amateur and GMRS, mentioned a couple fines here. Howard Gorski, 2019, $17,000 for intentional interference to amateur radio. Section 333, harmful interference, causing intentional harmful interference. May 30th, 2023, we issued a fine to Jamie John Leone in Rockford, Illinois. This person was intentionally jamming he had a transmitter that was just putting out what sounded like a digital noise. It was just putting a carrier out with a little bit of modulation on it to interfere with everybody on the CB band. We fined him, and that's a second fine that he got, and that's $25,000. August 24th, 2023, the one case maybe everybody knows, Jonathan Guertez, 467.625 of Steelton, Pennsylvania, transmitting intentional interference, transmitting music in continuous tones, and failing to transmit the call sign or GMRS frequency. May 30th, 2023, Philip Bardet proposing a penalty of $24,000, interfering with Amateur Net, the Western Amateur Radio Friendship Association, and I guess their weekly net. So we caught them and issued a $24,000 fine. And in June 8th, 2022, Jason Frawley, intentional interference to U.S. Forestry Services. As the planes were flying over, trying to put out a fire, he was communicating with them and causing interference, and they got fined $34,000. So there's a lot of enforcement work, and it takes a lot of effort to do those. And maybe Al could talk a little bit about that investigation as much as he can on what went into that investigation. But I really recognize these guys for the work they put in. It was a long investigation, but finally they caught somebody causing problems, and I think hopefully it's made an impact in your community. All right, thanks for the time.
You know, if you're in show business, they say you should not follow a kids act or animal act. I wasn't sure. I'm the kid. Well, y'all know me by now. My name's Al, and a lot of the work that he talks about the team. It's always been a team effort. I'm just the idiot that gets to go out there at night and do stuff. But between my partners back here, we collaborate a lot of things. I don't know everything. I know a lot of stuff. My wife tells me I don't know nothing. Typical. But between Laura and Hollinsworth over here, him and I have gone back in the 90s. When I was in the service, we actually met a few times at ARRL when I was doing some stuff overseas of bad guys. And we actually got a couple classes together. That's how far back we go. So I had the opportunity to work with, what they say, I walk amongst giants. That's what I do. But my part of it here, and Dave's been real kind about us. He gets us go out there, and we get to be the boots on the ground. And that last 50 meters really matters, and you guys can see it. A lot of the amateur radio community out there might say, well, they're just a bunch of engineers. There's a lot of amateur operators in this commission that understand the reason why we do this. So we all deal with subparts, 97, 95, and things like that. But we stick to those subparts, and we go, well, what's the FCC rules say about part 95? But a lot of y'all, and a lot of people don't realize there's part 1, 0, 2, part section 3, and goes down and goes down. All these above you actually work in correlation in what we do. If I do an inspection on your station, you deny me an inspection of the station, it's a violation of 301. That's an instant violation right there. Just kind of have a nice day. And please, don't do that. Because all I'm there is trying to figure things out. A lot of times it stops with us. If it gets past us and goes to the lawyers, then you get to talk to them and work with them. It's out of my hands. The case that we had here for a long time, it was because of proper help and work with some of the community out there. And the thing is that we have a lot of professional people in the hobbies, the services. And thanks for bringing that hobby thing up. I forgot about that case. You don't ever yell at the judge. I did once. But a lot of people don't understand that. There's a lot of professional people in this community that goes out there and do this. We happen to have something that we give ourselves. No one's asked you to put up a GMRS repeater. No one's asked you to put an amateur radio repeater or coordinate it properly to get it out there to make it function, because we want to be all harmonious out there. Is that the right word? It ain't the word. We all like to be a big club out there. A lot of people will take it upon themselves to do stuff. So where does the point of contention is? The point of contention is that if you have a problem, you as the repeater owner has a great responsibility to work with it. I can only go with the rules and technical violations there are, but you have more of an impact than I do. I'm your last resort, but I'm a good reserve to get out there and get it resolved. We have intentional radiators. We have people that's causing. We have interference every day. HF. Who runs HF in here all the time, and all the land noise and all the power line noises and such, right? We're a technical hobby. Let's get the power companies to work with stuff, which I do work with them, but we're a technical hobby. Why not use technology to help us get through this while it's being repaired? You see? We had a case out in Ohio, $7.6 million is going to cost them to fix this problem. Power company ain't going to do that real quick, but they're working with to do it. So how do we as a community come together and go, hey, this worked for me, this doesn't work for me, this is what I did. RFI, there's a mailing list out there called RFI Contesters, I think it's called. And they're out there, they talk about this stuff all the time. And people go and they sit there and complain, like Tom was saying, they complain about something, but that's all they do is complain. So how do you resolve it? How do you come together? And having a good community of professional people out there that understands what it means to have the right equipment and or techniques going forward, or hey, you're complaining about something, you're using a repeater to jam other people because you're upset about something. How about offline? Bad medium to do it in because of technical violations on it. That's not a medium. I was always taught two things you don't talk about on the radio, politics and religion. You guys ever hear that? Because everybody has an opinion. And not everybody wants your opinion on the radio. So some of the cases we've had was because of they had a problem with something. I can feel it for you, but it's not the medium to use it in. So these rules and these authorities that we have, as the commission has, anything that's non-federal has to be licensed. There's radiators, Part 15s. You know, some of the power stations say, oh, it's only Part 15. I bought it off Amazon. Here we go. There we go. Let's start doing that. Then we get to get all the information together and really investigate this. And the first thing we start off is, where is it coming from? And your information, and I wore out Tom and somebody else and the other repeater a bunch of information. And someone told me, just get your van up here and find them. I don't drive a van. I had kids. I had a van back when I was a kid. But that aggression is like, now I'm not getting now you got this wall between us because now you're telling me to do my job. I will do my job. I get paid to do this job. I don't mind getting out there at night. He don't mind me calling him 2 o'clock in the morning to go, hey, I need a couple more hours. I'm on the way home. So we're going to do our job. But I understand your frustrations out there when it comes down to some of these issues that happen. It's like HF. You got a lot of things going on in HF. Why ain't you doing it? Well, you made the complaint. Move along. There's 10,000 different frequencies we can use and from the extra class all the way down. Why do you want to sit on one channel or one frequency and worry about what goes on? Yes, it's wrong. Don't engage the subject, because if you're engaging the subject, now you're doing one-way communications to an unauthorized, unlicensed operator. What am I going to do now? I'm going to have to look at you. Why are you talking? Hey, had no problem on calling me. Cool, I understand that. But think about it. And when they ask the FCC to be in the area, the FCC is going to be in the area. Well, it depends on the direction we have, my director, of what priority of works we have out there. We have we have a very busy schedule. We want to take this time up, come up here, because we've been working on this, because this really matters, this crosstalk and this knowledge here. All right. Part 15, as well as all the subparts we have, has a lot of weird gray areas in it. Yeah. Okay. Raise of hands. What is the max power of a Part 15 radio device? Oh, no. 250 microvolts per meter square. 3. So the antenna in the coax is what's measured within it. So if it's beyond 3 meters, like we had a case where the amateur had a nice radio station, but he's only putting out 1/100 of a watt, but the antenna is 25 feet up in a 100-foot cable. So now I'm measuring it 5 miles away. Gain of the antenna, right? So those rules are in there for a reason. That's where our lines and limits are. But we also like to make sure we work with people to go, hey, this is what we're trying to resolve, okay? So Part 15 is kind of a crazy thing. Even with Part 97, oh, here's one for you. Yeah, I want to bring this up. So we're talking about parts here. I'm looking at some cheat papers right here because I don't know everything. Ask my wife. How many times did you amateur radio operators got to ID yourself on the air? Right. What about your GMRS operators? Depends. Yeah, the scenarios like that. So the one thing that people don't understand, I listened when I was doing the operation up here with you all's guest that was enjoying your repeater, I heard a conversation go on for 45 minutes. So I reached out to the repeater owner, and I said, you need to let them know that I'm listening. You asked me to be here, I'm going to be here. The team I work with we're going to do that. We're going to put stuff up. And what's cool about our technology is I don't have to sit there with it. I can be anywhere in the States and look into it and go, yep, it's coming up. Or go back in historical records and go, yeah, it came up for, that's how we were successful with the one case. If you go to do this stuff, you're going to build a pattern for me. I appreciate that. It might take you 5 minutes to build the pattern. It might take you 5 months. But it will be fun because energy is a great thing, right? So there's little rules and stuff that we understand to apply for. So if something happens on one of these local repeaters, when it comes down to your responsibility working with the repeater owner, is this as great as, don't harass the guy. It's like the speeder going down the road. He's speeding. You're going to speed and tell him stop speeding? So the trooper's sitting there going, what, you guys are speeding? They're not going to tag two of y'all. So why? Okay, you made the complaint, move along. But we're going to reach out to you, start asking this information. I really appreciate the comment about a van, though. That was kind of cool. I don't drive a van. I don't. I have a nice car. Oh, yeah. One thing I really want to bring up, because this has happened up in this area up here. Show of hands, how many of you guys have linked GMRS repeaters? That's the question should be asked. You can't link it in the internet. It's like using Zello, because you can use a control to turn it on and off, but you can't link, or what they say in the rules, you can't convey GMRS traffic. Now, they say POTS. It doesn't matter anymore. The POTS, the whole POTS thing is there. It's there. You know, the internet's our phone now. Okay, so the technology, the wording hasn't kept up. But if someone asked me the other day, a new GMRS operator said, I'm going to do this. Okay, tell you what, go to the rules. He read the rules. He comes back to me, goes, rules say this. I know. Last time I did not go to law school, so I don't know how to read, legalese. Okay, but remember I told you beginning of those sections way up here, how they govern everything else below it. There's a subpart to it. Then you go to the FCC webpage, and it says right there in the webpage, you cannot link them or connect them by any type of network. It's always been that way because technology we haven't caught up with technology when it comes down to it. So I got cases all over the country right now. And slowly it's getting out. Now you can control them, turn them on and off. Yeah, that's one of the things. Now wireless, someone somehow got something from wireless that said you can do this. Well, wireless is great, but it's the EB division, the ones who are going to interpolate laws, look at the laws and go, hey, the laws say, okay, that's what the law says. Okay, so that nightmare of the internet, I know anything on the internet, everything on the internet is real. I'm a French model. Okay? So be careful what you read out there. And a lot of these user groups, and a lot of these forums out there that talk about this stuff, you always got that one guy, I know. Do you know? There's been some bad information being put out there. And believe, I'm just involved in the groups out there as you all are. For me, and there's other people out there looking at this, and like, wow, this guy's going to really slow this guy down the rabbit hole on this one, ain't it? So how do we resolve all this? It's going to become the complaints from you, from the consumer out there, from the operators out, the professional people out there to say, hey, I got this issue, then I'll deal with it one at a time to go through there. We're all speed, but should we? And how fast are we speeding? So how do we communicate that information back to us so we can resolve the case, resolve the issue going on in hand? Reading the proper text in there is like, hey, hang on a second. How does it work? And making sure it works properly. Because not only you are on the radio, there's 1,000 scanner listeners out there. There's some 8-year-old kids, someone's 5-year-old daughter's listening to the radio and go, I want to be on that radio? So what do we do for our hobby? Look at us. I'm only 104 years old. I'm young. So how do I convey to some youth coming up the ranks? I was licensed in 78. 78, not as long as you, sir, but someone has to do it. So how do we keep this service going forward in all the different services if we don't show our professionalism out there? And we're the ones, the front line. You're all the front line people. Do you harass that guy in 7200? Or you let him just melt themselves down and go to 70, 175 and hang out there with your boys and girls and talk down there? You all have an impact to the services out there as well as we do. We're just your last 50 meters. But I'd be glad to discuss any of this stuff afterwards. There's a lot of stuff that goes on out there. I mean, thanks for right up from Dave here. There's a lot of cool words in here that I can use. But the point blank, bottom line up front thing is that we're here to work with people out there to keep those rules and regulations from the 1934 Communication Act, and one, impact of saving lives, to prevent failure of communications, and make sure it works. Because there's a lot of things out there that people don't understand. We work with the FAA all the time. Well, this is a radio frequency. Drop an airplane out of the sky because of a bad radio. Your mom's calling 911, can't make it because the guy down the road has a faulty BDA. That trooper's out there trying to communicate because he's getting shot at. He can't get out. I was on highway patrol for a while in Tennessee. I lived a pretty cool life, you know that? You get my point? Communication is very important, and how do we do it? This is a service right now. We're doing a great job at the service. But you guys have as much responsibility out there in the community as much as we do. We just guys get to go run around with badges and stuff. Sir? Yeah. What happened, okay, let's start off the beginning. I got the complaint. I started working the complaint. So I started building my information in my case. We looked at it. The three of us looked at it, talked to the director and say, hey, this is what our game plan is. So I reached out to Tom. I started having him build a log of what time this guy comes on. No one's ever deputized. If you think you know who it is and you went by the guy's house, you go, oh, it's like it's him. Cool. I still have to use my equipment to zero in on it. So I asked him and his guys he was working with to build a log process to say what time, what was he saying? You have a recording of it. Then I got my equipment in the area, and I kept moving my gear around here and here to zero in on them, and which we did. And then one evening, some of you all went out there and started using your DFing gear and say, we think he's right here. I just had to roll up there a couple days later and go, yep. Now, that's that case. The one or the two guys before that incident, it's going on for 2 years now. Same thing. They got me to a walk. They got me to the intersection of walk and don't walk. It's just a make-believe road. And then from that intersection, I found where that gentleman was coming from. And he received our talking points too. So that's the whole thing. Some people have to say the FCC is not going to do anything. We are doing something. It's not we're not doing it for you right now. So, but more information, the more crosstalk we have, the more evidence I want to build, the more understanding of what's going on here. My partner and I spent, 2 days up here and a whole night? We traveled to all your repeaters, and then that magic moment happened, and we slid right on top. It's okay. So I'm not going to knock your door at 9 o'clock at night. I don't have to. That's what the paperwork's for. That's what our evidence for, and that's when we start sending out our paperwork. But I felt this had to be a direct contact because I said I wanted to stop too, because it does cause a problem, doesn't it? How many of you all have units out there who get on the radio and something happens and want to reach out to dad or mom? What happens when that guy's going, something's going on with that repeater? He can't get a hold of you. The cell phone service, yeah, okay, cool. Technology, right? But that's what we did. We built responsibility. I gave them a direction and go, this is what we need to do. Do not make contact. That's what I get to do. I like doing that. But we kept building the pattern. Yes, was a hand. Yes, that was the whole thing. The groundwork was presented by them, and we just augmented it with our equipment so I can gather because it's called evidence. These cases are legal cases. Think about it. We don't give you a fine, right? we're not out there just to pull strings. We're out there to make it, make the corrections and to educate and enforce. I think that's the word I wanted to use, right? Well, because I'm the guy in charge, sir. Oh,
What was the question?
yeah, good. Get the microphone, Gabe.
What are the ramifications for somebody who's crazy enough to ignore a sanction letter from the FCC?
Are you talking about just a warning letter or a fine? A fine. Okay, so if we find someone and they elect not to pay, what the agency does is they will issue a forfeiture order at that point. Originally, we send out a notice of apparent liability and then a forfeiture order saying we have assessed this fine. If they elect not to pay at that point, then we send it to the Department of Justice. We are a regulatory agency. We are not cops. So we send it to Justice, and then Justice initiates a proceeding. During the course of that proceeding, they will go before a judge, and if the individual shows up, they have the opportunity to present their case, as does the attorney for justice. And if the judge rules in the favor of the agency, then Justice has the ability to levy what am I trying to say? They can take money from them. I've totally blanked. Thank you, Riley. Garnish them. And even if they're on disability from the government, they can still garnish a portion of it, even if it's $1 each month. The United States government tends to get its money no matter how long it takes once they go to that step. If in the course of this proceeding you continue to operate you buy new radios or you continue to violate the rules, the commission can also go to an in rem proceeding, and we can come out with marshals and take the equipment. And at that point, Dave and his team gets to have a party and destroy it with hammers.
It's painful. You got the mic here. Jeff's going to ask a question, and if you have a question, just get the mic, pass it around the room.
This question is for the young lady. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Laura. Okay. First of all, on a daily, weekly, monthly, however you formulate your metrics, how many complaints do you get? And the second part is, what's the percentage that end up in an actual fine?
I get between 300 and 400 cases a year. And I happen to actually know that because we're able to run those metrics on our computers. We track everything that comes in via our online system. There is a permanent record. I can't go in and delete your complaint. There's a reason for that. That protects you, that protects me, and that makes sure that the information is contained within the agency. For bookkeeping, we have to have a certain amount of records and keep them for 7 years is the time we keep them. A very small percentage end up going to a case. And the reason is I get a lot of complaints in the amateur arena. Pete interrupted Joe and me today. Great. Some guy or woman is coming up on our frequency. When, where, who, they provide no details. We get an enormous number of complaints that provide literally no details. Even if I go back to them and ask for additional details, I don't get them on a general rule. It was a one and done. They got mad, they filed a complaint, so they went to the online system. What are you doing, Riley? I do actually know where you live, and I know your wife. But to finally answer your question, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 ultimately go to a case. My job is to stand between you and the field agents. It gives you a point of contact, and it makes sure that once we send it to Dave and his team or any of the other regional directors, it is actually colorable, meaning that there is a real case there. And to get to that case, I actually send it to this guy here and ask them to double check before I send it to Dave's team. So there are several layers in between when you file it and when it goes somewhere.
Riley, the only question I have, and I know because I have a scanner and it runs and everything, when you get these flagger guys that are on FRS and you hear about who screwed the night before, who drank the night before, whatever, and you got to imagine these kids get these bubble pack radios, and of course they're all cool. Then all of a sudden, Mommy, what's this mean? And the mom's about ready to have a heart attack. What the kids. What advice would you give for somebody like when they monitor and they hear that kind of stuff?
Turn the channel. Switch to PL on, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it came down that they can use FRS. It's the GMRS side of it, But it's like me going down the road. Not me. I'm sorry. It put me in a bad contention there. It's like my son going down the road with a certain bumper sticker in the back of his car. You know, so it's a family use radio, but a lot of flaggers out there use that stuff. Now we talked about that over when we had a censor out. We started hearing some flaggers down the road on one of y'all's channels. They had a talking to because they were supposed to, you're in the GMRS thing, go to a different channel. Okay, cool, like that. We come across things like that a lot. Someone being an amateur channel that got a license somewhere else that decides to do downtown DC or something, and then we get involved with that. But when it comes down to scanning, it goes back to, do I want to sit here and listen to this? Or, hey, switch radios. Switch channels, PLs, use the PL. That's what they're there for. So one idea of technology being used, right? But there is a lot of flaggers use those because they're cheap and they're easy to use.
Right.
So.
Who has a question? Pass the mic. Right here. Get the mic.
I like that tune. It's all good.
All the cases that you work and close out, is that something you can look up on the FCC site?
Our case files? No. That's what you see on the FCC is after all the legal process goes by. It's like looking at we're law enforcement, so our casework is for internal use only. But all you see is what's left at the end, what gets past the lawyers and the judges. That's what you see.
Now, if you submitted the complaint, do you get an answer back that it was resolved then?
I always talk back to complainant because it's like anything else. Hey, thanks for your time. I always get back with the complainant because it goes back. Yeah, they got back to him. This was happening. They can't fix it. They could fix it. Oh, by the way, this was resolved on it. I didn't know that. There's a lot of people out there know a lot of things that they don't know about. So, but yeah, I always like to get back to the complainant.
Question? Grab the mic. Come on, guys. Ask them now.
Yes, I have a question, not necessarily for GMRS or Family Radio Service, but more about a commercial entity operating an LMR. For those folks who have frequencies that are coordinated through coordinators, and we end up finding out that, let's say, McDonald's is now operating down the street on a licensed frequency from us 3 blocks away, the coordinator missed it. What is the best practice for somebody who has a licensed coordinated frequency to go about complaint or mitigation of that?
Well, right back. It goes right to make the complaint. This is my channel. This is my this is my assigned channel frequency. We've had cases like that before. It turned out to be a hospital that somehow got these frequencies. Someone gave them the radios and it was somebody else's frequency. So we had to go in and instruct them. Hey, here's your education part of it.
So if both parties are licensed and both parties are legit, it was probably a miscoordination. Do they still make the complaint to you?
So we have such an investigation. I'm giving you steps of what we do is that we can go back to who gave it to you and turn out to be the same radio guys. Like, hey, in a second, you realize you gave them the wrong, or they just didn't know. So it does happen out there. So you make that complaint. But Dave, I'll let you go.
So once they get a license, they have protection. That's the biggest thing. So if we got that complaint, we would verify the interference, check their licensing, make sure they're compliant with the terms of their license. If it comes out that they are operating according to the license, we'll try to work with them to resolve it among themselves. If we can't get cooperation, then we send it back to the coordinators. And that's where we'd have to maybe...
And that was really where my question is.
Yeah.
Do I come to you first, or should I just go back to my coordinator?
So go to the FCC. There was a memorandum of understanding initiated back in the 90s that the frequency coordinator would handle it. We would say if you know that there's another licensee and you don't suspect anything illegal going on, then yeah, that maybe is the case that goes to the frequency coordinators. But it's always good to give us a heads up and do it duly.
Questions, guys? Come on. Gotta ask them now.
You see? I'm typically not a rule breaker. So I've been licensed since 1977. A kid in high school, allegedly. Cracker box, I guess, license. Simplex use. The IRLP nodes that everybody uses. And I've got a whole list of questions, but I'll save the battery in the microphone. on my IRLP node, is it legal to operate on a simplex, coordinated simplex frequency, or does the node need to be on an experimental frequency, not necessarily a calling channel like 5.2 or 446.0?
Thanks. That conversation came up, and I think the ARRL members can actually, who are actually in the know up here, can figure it out. Someone said to me, ladder 3. Someone came up the other day and said, hey, I'm going to put a repeater up on 14652. It's a frequency. The gentleman's agreement says it's a calling channel. All right, that's what the ARRL plan's all about. So you're talking about experimental. You're talking about it's not really coordinated 'cause it's not a repeater. So I think the fine line is going to be what is the section managers are saying, what's going on, what's the ARRL saying, what's the FCC? The FCC, like my director said, we're giving you room to grow. We're amateurs. We should be out there experimenting and making things go better and stuff like that. So where's that agreement at? You know, I just can't pop 14652 up here on a repeater because it's actually a calling channel. But the experimental part of it, I can't speak to that, but I do know what the ARRL says to it. It says experimental. The experimental channels.
So would an experimental channel be a non-standard simplex frequency other than a calling frequency like 5.2?
I don't know the band plan like that. I don't know the band plan at all like that. But for us, it's not a. For me, I wouldn't think it's a.
So, for example, 147.51 is a standard simplex frequency. 146.55 is a standard simplex frequency.
And Laura can correct me. It comes down to a catch-all that's in the Part 97 that people ignore. Everything else is within good amateur practice. ARRL doesn't have any authority. We're an NGO, non-government organization, as you all know, recognized National Association for Amateur Radio, so we have some sway with respect to suggested band plans, which ultimately are supposed to go to the area coordinators. And if there is no band plan in a particular area by the coordinators, then the national plan can be looked at. I would avoid simplex channels that are on the popular amateur frequencies. There are frequencies you could use that are, I won't say non-standard, because if you're using split channels, you're interfering with two simplex channels. We get a lot of that in the Philadelphia area because the amateur bands are jammed. Good amateur practice may suggest you go to a higher frequency. There's plenty of room on 440, 900, 1296. People aren't going to do that yet, even though there's radios available for that. So there's no specific answer, and it would take, there's an argument on both sides. If I was arguing on your side of the equation, I could make some arguments that say you can do what you're doing. If I was arguing on the other side of that equation, I could make a really good argument that you shouldn't be on a standard simplex channel. And there are other frequencies within the coordinators' spectrum management that you could operate on. 2 meters is a tough example because it's jammed. We only have 4 megahertz there. You go to 450, there's a lot more room. Nobody wants to operate below 440, but there are coordinated, approved, or suggested coordinated frequencies on 440, 900 megahertz, which I operate on, 1296, and I've got 4 or 5 FM radios on that band. You can actually buy some. It's a lot easier to make an argument that you can do what the hell you want on those higher bands, and you probably should. I would encourage you to do that. Most people just don't want to do it. They want to be on 2 meters. 6 meters has lots of room above 52 megahertz, and that is an uncultivated spectrum gem. Even if you live in an area where there's a channel
hard to carry a 6 meter handheld. So 220, there was.
Good, sir.
Yeah, and it's got a shoulder strap.
HA 650 used to.
So to back up, it's not against the law to be on a standard simplex frequency. I guess that's the bottom. Well, the bottom line is, are you causing any kind of interference? In Indianapolis, where I am, there's the channels are not really widely used. So I've got 2 nodes on 655 and 751, and I have no issues at all. But the question is, am I legal?
It is not. It's not clear cut. I mean, I practiced law for 45, and in radio,
I had a girlfriend like that.
Yeah. Good amateur practice.
No. Does it actually say you can't operate on that frequency?
It doesn't literally. I'm sorry. It doesn't literally say that, but I can make an argument that it does. That's what I'm getting at. But not where you are, where you're not interfering with anybody, and that's why it's an area issue. I'm sorry. I've not been.
Real issue that you not, like if you're on an IRLP node, for example, okay, and the receiver on that IRLP node has a PL tone decoder on it.
Get in the mic. Get in the mic.
Oh, give me the damn mic. Okay. Okay. I'm not getting. I would never get mad at Laura. Anyway, if you have an IRLP node that has encode decode on it, and let's say it's got encode decode, and someone else is using that same frequency on carrier squelch, that IRLP node is not going to know that someone else is talking on that channel, and it is not prevented by doing so to keep its transmitter from coming up and stomping on the conversation that's in progress.
That happens all the time.
That's
For
the
example, in the Philadelphia area, we have that problem on 535 and 565, where all the Aries units operates, and it ticks me off because that the remote has been off for an hour, and the Delaware County Aries group is using a simplex for a drill, and they just talk on top of us. They don't know we're there, they don't care, and we don't even know who it is because we can hear call signs, but not of the node that's reproducing somebody else's audio from some repeater somewhere else. That is the practical problem that we have to address one way or another. How we do that, there's no clear answer. There's arguments on both sides.
So back to my original question, not interfering, no issues. Is it legal for me to have my IRLP node on a standard simplex channel?
Yes.
The commission deliberately and intentionally is not entering this conversation. All right? If you want to take it up with Bob after, that's a fight between you and the ARRL. The agency. We've done that for years. If you go back and you read the rulemakings, there you go. But if you read the rulemakings in which we establish repeaters and coordination, we deliberately and intentionally did not address the issue of what frequencies were or were not to be used. Those are left to the coordinators in the amateur community. If you come to me and you say, I have in this instance, on this date, at this time, at this location, an incident of interference, then we can address it. But we will not do it generically.
Thank you for that. That was a great definition.
So just for clarification with the GMRS, with the talking about linking and whatnot, y'all do not have a problem with microwave or RF. It is strictly internet, or just to understand the word, because this is such a gray area, and this gets fought over the internet every single day, all day long. So
You're absolutely right. Let me read you thank you. Appreciate that. All right, this is the rule that comes down to. It's 95.1749 GMRS network connections. Operation GMRS stations within a telephone connected is prohibited.
Okay.
As in 95.349. GMRS repeaters fixed based stations, however, can be connected public switch for sole purpose of remote control. Then it says here, but will not be connected to or other networks to sole purpose of operating. So you can't connect them. You can control them remotely by turning them on and off. Hey, someone's on and you bring it down. But conveying that GMRS information through the internet, it baffles my mind if somebody wants to talk from New York to Washington State on a frequency that can cause interference because you don't know who's on the other side. Well, the repeater, are you? And I've seen people out there use repeater pairs, by the way. I talked to a few people about that. But no, you can't be connected to any type of network. It states right on the front page of the FCC page or any network. No, it says POTS too, but it's not to convey. That's the interference part.
Is there an official opinion letter that I read about 4 years ago? Sometimes one of the bureaus issued will answer a question like that. That particular. I've seen, you sent it to me, there are official opinions that are published with respect to interpretation from time to time, and there was one about 3 or 4 years ago that Jeff sent me regarding GMRS. It said that, in fact, internet connection is the same as telephonic remote connection. Remote control just means turn it on and off. I don't know if those are publicly available on the website. They should be. Is it relevant?
You're not controlling unless it comes from the commission as part of a proceeding. Yeah, it has to be part of a proceeding. That is then, of course, something that is now part of the rules and the interpretation of the rules. If it's written at a staff level, we can be wrong. I am once a year wrong, maybe. But the point is, if it's at a staff level and it's not something that the commission itself has adopted, it is considered, an opinion by the staff.
And just one more question, if that's okay.
That's fine. That's what happened with that letter that went out. It was somebody's opinion.
Okay, and then so point-to-point microwave would not work for y'all. It's because that's not internet.
That's not a phonic. That's
it's we're doing an RF. I mean, all it is just a higher frequency.
yeah. It's just other networks. I mean, until I get a better reading on this, you're talking to a guy who just reads black and white that goes on out and does his job.
Yeah.
So it comes back down. Someone said RF links one time, so I never got a good read on that. And I'm not going to give that advice to anybody because I don't know what that means. It like she was saying, I haven't got that finalized by the headquarters. Say, oh, by the way, this is it.
Yeah. The other question I had too is, and this is probably a super hated topic in this room, but a lot of people don't have a lot of respect for the CB band. And, there's a lot of people probably in this room who have said that it went out of style in the 90s. And really the truth was that there were certain individuals who are now running so much power and they've just essentially destroyed the entire band. And the truth is that there are people who would still be interested in CB, but you can't turn it on without using it because there's so much garbage that's on the air, and they've all now come to GMRS, and you've just seen the explosion that you've seen now within the last 2 years, really, since the end of COVID or even the beginning of it. And I was really happy to see that recently over the summer. I think it was like in y'all in Tennessee, you guys went after somebody who was he was just running so much power, and he was interfering with somebody, whatever. And I was just wondering, like, do y'all expect to keep, enforcing the CB ban, looking into that into the future?
I support the rules and regulations of the 1934 Communication Act.
Okay.
And that means I have to go investigate that? Yes. And by the way, when I go to investigate you, I'm going to ask for everything I can. Measuring your station, your RADHAZ report. I'm going to go right down the list. Or I'm going to use compliance to realize that that the whole matterism of using amplification on a 4-watt radio blows my brain a lot. There's a lot of professional people out there in the CB world. There's a lot of people, there's a few people in the amateur community who are like, how'd you get your license? So we have good apples and bad apples no matter where we go. When you make the complaint, gets filtered down to us. We go, well, God, a couple of people out there right now, a couple of channels right now are just destroying it. Their day is like speeding. You're going to get caught speeding. It's going to happen. But yeah, we're investigating stuff like that because it does matter. That's why I like people come to 440, GMRS. But one thing about GMRS, you have more of a control environment where you can educate people, go, hey, this is how we do things. There's more organized groups out there. Back in the React days to the ARRLs and RACES now, there are a lot of professional people out there who want to do this. They want to have that communication structure. So how do you all, I'm throwing it back on top of you, how do you educate these people coming over from the 11-meter bands? Used to be an amateur band, by the way. 11 meters come in there and go, oh, this is how we do things over here. Oh, really? Everybody wants a home to go to. So think about that.
Okay, Al, Dave, Laura, Riley. I know some of yous. So being the honest one when you brought up the linking, so I'm glad we have these kind of meetings because this is how we get educated. A lot of the React guys are linking their GMRS repeaters to get better coverage. In my case, I'm disabled. My wife's disabled. I've got 2 small GMRS machines, but I'm linking them through Ubiquiti Nano stations, which are like Wi-Fi network through the laptop, so that the 2 machines, so if I'm at work, she can still reach me because otherwise I can't hear her from the other machine. So you're basically saying that is not legal either. If that's the case, I'll stop doing it. But
yeah, because you're going through the internet.
Well, I'm not going through the internet. I'm going Wi-Fi. It's point to point.
It's network.
It's considered so that
one thing people fail to a lot of people fail to realize what GMRS is for. All right, it's for short distance communications, 20, 30 miles.
Not even that.
Some of y'all repeaters are covering 60, 70 miles. Why do I want to take a repeater that I didn't ask you to put up and connect to another repeater that's 100 miles away to talk to somebody about, well, I want more activity. I see it all the time on
I'm only talking about
my
13
GMRS.
miles.
I want more activity. I want more activity. I want more activity. Well, if you have a good mannerism and a good organized company of people, you'll get more activity. Why do I need to contact 4 or 5 or connect 4 or 5 different repeaters together from guy in Kansas to go, what are we talking? How is
I
it
agree.
interaction to that?
I agree.
What happened
But-
to HF? There's a whole concept right
Yeah,
there.
I'm just talking about 2 small machines,
Right.
less than 13 miles apart.
But overcoming overcoming the technical part of it, and I'm going to talk as a technical guy
Yeah,
now,
no.
is that how do you overcome these limitations of some of our services we do? Use technology, but not in the sense where I need to connect them. That's an easy thing. Challenge yourself. I don't know how much you all got paid in your equipment, how much time you put in your license structure, your professional business and stuff like that. I only got a couple of dollars myself wrapped up into it, okay? It challenges me when I go out and do these things to go, how do we resolve this? There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background between my other 2 partners and me that we're always in the middle about. Advanced technology to go, okay, that'd be kind of cool to use it here. How do we do it? How do we overcome these limitations? There's an easy way, then there's the right way.
I got you. The only reason I had the 2 is because as I was telling Dave, there's one repeater on the same frequency in New York that can be heard all the way from Mount Kisco to Valley Forge. You know, if he wasn't there, I can use just the one machine and still communicate with her. But all right, I'll disconnect.
And that's the whole thing. There's another cool technology we have out there called the cell phone. But I understand it. I understand. I do understand the flight that we have. We're a radio. We want to have that $8,000, $700 on our belt line. See what I can do with DMR, P25, P16. What I can do with blah blah blah. I know that. I know that. We need to advance ourselves. The Japanese every year, when I was a spectrum manager in the service, they had a requirement to go back to their commission and say, "This is what I did to improve stuff." That was the rumor. I don't know if it's really true, but I do know. I talked to some of my my partners who I want to go, this is what we do. Every year we go back and say, this is what we do to make it work better. Or what happens? We don't get the license. So we got this great resource out here that's under fight, is always under scrutiny. Every time we look around, all these frequencies, what does big business want from us?
Spectrum.
So how do we, as a community, come together and say, look, this is the right thing to do. That's the wrong thing to do. Well, I'll get my own repeater. Okay. Have a good time being by yourself, talking to, do what you got to do. But when this stuff comes by, it's being viewed. It's always being looked at. Look at our HF bands. Okay, why does everybody upgrade to extra class? It gives me more HF bands to go to. How many of y'all are QRP fans? QRPP fans. I use CW at 1 watt. Oh, you got to have, okay, cool. But what do you use the technology for? At the end of the day, we have to go into service to use our service to provide service and support for a disaster, a missing child. I can go on and go on. The tornadoes we chased in Tennessee, years and years, and the communication structure got destroyed. If you guys look online, and I'm going to bring this up to you all attention, if you look online by Hurricane Katrina that happened down in New Orleans, there's an article about me on there. Okay? You hear me talking in Tennessee, in the middle of Tennessee, 911 service calls, hits the FEMA director down in Nashville. He gets a hold of me, and I relayed a message from HF back in the affected zone. 23 nurses were in that building, and they were trying to break into the building. And I didn't know this thing existed for years. I just got out of the Army. I was figuring, I'll just go do what I got to do. And some guy did a book on it. He was going to do a whole book on it, but the whole thing. And you want to know what the amateur radio does to it. And I hear my voice in there relaying this message. What had happened was the SWAT team showed up, bagged a bunch of bad guys, and everybody's happy. Because of one guy sitting on the radio one night, got a message to convey back in the affected zone. That's what our service is about. It's not about, well, I want my own repeater and I'm going to be my own island. It's us, the community, us. And the guys out there and the folks out there who think they have to impact us by causing trouble, jamming, playing music and stuff like that, professional people are listening. Why would they have anything to do with us if we act like that? It's the only thing you ever really convey to each other when these things happen like this. But the more information we get from you as a EB agent out there, the better off we get to resolve this matter. Because it does matter at the end of the day It does matter, but we have to do it the right way. Wow, I just got off my soapbox on that one. Thanks. Okay. Band plan?
I have a band plan question. Yeah. Novice Tech CW area. I know in 10 meters there's a specific area for digital.
Right.
What about 40 meters, 80 meters? Do techs have digital privileges
No.
in those areas?
Riley will tell you that's a pretty big area of enforcement, right? That is, I'm sorry, Riley will tell you that that's a pretty big area of volunteer monitoring activity. It is a common misconception that technicians have privileges for data. It's only for CW. By the way, you can use automated CW as long as it's a real CW. You, as a technician, little known secret, don't tell anybody I told you, you can get on 40, 80 meters in the technician portion, small portion, and use keyboard CW. Doesn't say you got to use a keyer or a straight key, although that's a lot of fun. You can use a keyboard with a program, and you can decode. Some of those decoders are pretty good. And you can talk with people. It has to be genuine A1 or CW, right. Continuous wave, intermittent continuous wave. But you can't use data. You can't use all those cool modes. And that's why you've got to get your general, which I would argue is very easy to do. We are, by the way, the ARRL is petitioning to increase technician rights. That's been pending for some years now to give you data rights. You know, to use narrowband modes, FT8, FT4, PSK, zippity-doo-dah, all the multi-flavored digital modes that you can use on 10 meters. That's legal for a technician, and that's what causes the confusion, I think. Did that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a general, so I don't care. Okay. But I was having a discussion with somebody else who was a technician, and they said, "Well, we can do that. That's digital mode."
No, and they do,
it
and
isn't, because people call it the original digital.
No, in fact, Riley would know. I think it's an automated system now, is it not? You get violators by having a system that's doing sweeping. Right. He has It works really well.
Yeah. Yeah, we have volunteer monitors that run computer programs that match up the license with the frequency and so forth. But in fairness to the people doing it, there's a lot of band plans out there that when you look at them, it's very confusing. And it looks like they can do FT8. And then the question comes up, well, if we can do CW, why couldn't we do FT8? That's easy. And I don't know the answer to that. But and 80% or 90% of our cases, it was absolutely a misunderstanding as to the rights or regulations.
Back here.
Question from more of the technical folks. Excuse me. I'm with LVSRA, Lebanon Valley, and we occasionally get QRM on our repeater. Is there any low-cost, no-cost software that I can give to a couple of my trusted trustees, directors, to automate some of our DFing instead of going out with a handheld and a Yagi and compass?
That's the best technique in the world right there. Costs nothing. There's so much stuff online. I can't speak to. I mean, we were looking at some gear, and we were like 100 different things. I mean, it's, you got $1 billion, buy what you got to get. But there's so much stuff out there right now.
That's the answer I
Yeah,
got.
there's so much stuff out there that you can utilize and elevate to meet your mission's needs. But I can't speak to any of that. Oh, Jeff, you got something about that?
Probably the most common that you see out there. They're known as pseudo Doppler units. They typically have 4, sometimes 5 antennas, mag mounts. These space out on the roof of a vehicle, and you have a control head, and you hook it up to a receiver, and it effectively does more or less an electronic scanning, and it'll give you a bearing to the signal source. Some of the better units that integrate with mapping software so that you can plot bearings, and bearings tend to not be consistent because you have multipath reflections, et cetera. So it'll kind of give you a rough bearing, and as you get it closer to it, it'll kind of narrow it down better. And if you could triangulate it from multiple directions, that's even better. So that's probably the most common and most popular, the pseudo Doppler systems out there. Yeah. I mean, there's some that are, I think even MFJ makes one. There's another one called from KN2S. Doppler Systems makes a more professional one, but yeah, there's a number of them out there like that.
And I have a Doppler system in a bag. If you ever want to borrow it.
Kraken and before the Cerberus, yeah. There's a SDR based system that's available out there. So yeah, there's a number of choices.
I have a Doppler system in a bag. If you ever want to borrow it, you're more than welcome to use it. So, who else?
I have a question from here. I guess this is for Laura and Dave and maybe Riley. I know that there are a lot of warning letters that are sent that are never put on the website. What's the policy for which ones make it to the website and which ones don't? And in general, wouldn't it be good to publish? The more that are published, the better in terms of deterring others from doing the same kind of things that you're sending warning letters about.
No, we're not. No, we don't post anything that's not a final action by the agency. And a warning letter is actually not a final action. That might be a first action. This was done at the behest of our general counsel's office, who felt that we were releasing information prematurely. And they they directed that we no longer publish anything that is not a commission final action. I understand the potential implications of putting that out there. It certainly, Riley and I talk about this a lot. It acts as a deterrent, sure. And you would see a lot more that you don't know is going on behind the scenes. But we have to take into consideration the fact that these are, for the most part, initial actions, and what may or may not happen after that. We can't do anything until we take a final action. It did. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, Riley and I chatted about it as it was happening, and we used to publish all of them. We would remove the name or the addresses, but with the amateurs, all that stuff's in ULS anyway, because they put it as part of their licenses. By the way, if you don't want people to know your license or your address, put a post office box when you get your first license. Just putting that out there, because I get a lot of people saying, "Can we have that removed?" Sure, but the internet's forever, so it's going to stay out there. But yeah, about 5 years ago, OGC decided that we couldn't publish them anymore.
George has a question over here, and since he's already shot his nickel's worth, the question was whether or not advanced class licensees would be upgraded to extra and just eliminate the advanced class entirely, just grandfather.
That would be something you would have to present to the Wireless Bureau. We're enforcement. Enforcement just enforces the rules as they exist. We take no position with respect to policy. That is a policy question, and certainly you can file a petition with the Wireless Bureau requesting that. And then, we'll take care of it after you have died, because we're the agency and, we have a big backlog.
And the second question is, Al, if you would go through, like you receive a complaint about interference and you're coming up and investigating it and you find it, could you please go through the steps between, like, you've gathered your information and you hand it off to Laura for prosecution? The knock on the door, to a letter, to apparent liability, to notice of violation, or whatever. Could you go through all those steps up until you hit the notice of forfeiture or something?
Yeah, no problem. First of all, we throw our hands up in the air and start running around screaming our heads off. Like, why? No, we don't. So I get assigned the case from the director. It gets through the headquarters, comes down to our region if it's in our region. And then we start scrutinizing again. Then we try to figure out what the loads are. We all have a load of case loads. We have our own. So it depends who he's nice to, gets the best load in the world. So when he gets out to going out, let me back up a little bit, stutter some more in a second. Once you get the case, me and my colleagues will sit down and talk about the case. Due to past experiences, we start talking about it, and then what's our next procedure going forward? I turn it right from a complaint to a case. So now it's a case. Now it's becoming an official document type thing. So now I start looking at what can I do remotely, getting the information, and I have to get on scene and make the arrangements, get on scene with the vehicles, taking the right technology with me to go find it. So that technology could be anything from me driving a truck up there to gathering information from what happened a couple times here to go down. I have to go collect with my remote sensors. Knocking on the door is really thing that we do. Because the jammer, and I can talk about people using GPS jammers or radio jammers and other stuff, we want that resolved right now. There's no problem. We want that done right now. But in reality, I don't have to knock on your door. I just collect the information, confirm, deny, confirm who you are, I'm the witness too, and say, okay, cool, and just go, hey, that's what the evidence I have. Solid evidence? Oh, it's not? Okay, I'll go back out. But if I go to knock on your door or give you the letter, I'm pretty sure my responsibility has been met because I know for sure it's coming from you. What's your call again? So, and that's the procedures. Now, then we start talking back and forth, and Dave's been around for a while with Laura, and my partner back here, Shannon. They've been around a little bit. So it's like, what's the right steps to do? We don't want to do nothing half step because we want to make sure it's the right information. It's all gathering information of the technical violations. That's what we're there for. There's no bias in there. We don't want bias because it jeopardizes the case. So then from there, it goes, the evidence goes forward. We start talking to the lawyers. We get the paperwork written up, and they go back and forth. Those lawyers got a lot of work going on there, a lot of work, because the constitutional responsibility is this. Before I accuse you, I'm going to make sure it's you. So when I told you last time I was up here, before I leave, I'm going to make sure I know who it is, because if I come on scene, I'm not leaving empty-handed. I will not. I just don't want to put my partner's lives in safety or safe factor. In fact, us knocking the wrong door, believing the wrong person, what have you. So we really get down in the weeds about, we make sure it's coming from that window, from that home, from that, whatever it is. But that's the whole procedure. And then once I hand it off to lawyers, we're done. So if you don't work with us, you work with them. There's legal stuff and paperwork and judgments. And you ever talked to a lawyer before?
My son's a telecom attorney.
No,
so
yes,
yes.
there you go. So, but that's what we do. And that's how I've been doing it. Now, I can get out of here and get re-educated later about it, but we're to make sure it's the right thing's done. I don't want to blame anybody that's not to be blamed. Because a lot of you guys will come up and say, oh, it's so-and-so. It's those guys over there. It's that Chinese restaurant. It's that flagger. I know. It's your neighbor. It's someone who's in your community doing it.
Okay, then Laura, what's your process once you receive it?
Well, once the case gets forwarded for legal, and I actually only handle amateur, but there are a lot of other cases that go before other attorneys in the Enforcement Bureau. We review the case file, and then we have to draft an NAL. The NAL will go through an enormous review process. We have a whole agency full of lawyers, and all of them have an opinion. So it goes through that, and once it has been reviewed and re-reviewed, and we've changed happy to glad and glad to feeling good, and ultimately we get an approval. It then goes to, if it's below $25,000, it will go out at a bureau level. If it's above $25,000, it has to go through yet another review process. Our general counsel will review it. It will go to the commissioners. Then if it's below 25, our bureau chief can sign it. If it's above 25, he has to have a vote of a majority. There are 5 of them. They also have their own legal teams, and they also have more edits. And then ultimately it will go out the door. And then that's a notice of apparent liability. You will have an opportunity to respond to that. You can either do it in person, in filing, you can pay it. Dave went through the whole litany of what is available to you at that point. At some point, if the agency believes that the notice of apparent liability is legitimate, i.e. that Al and his team have done their job and the case is solid, then we will go to a forfeiture order. That says that the notice of apparent liability is now due and owing to the United States government. You can either pay it at that time or you can appeal it. You can take it to the district courts if you wish. You can file a petition for review and ask that the commission reconsider on its own motion. There are a whole litany of things that are available to you. You can also decide not to pay it, which we talked about earlier. Then we will send that particular one over to justice for enforcement. But at that point, many times the individual will either negotiate a consent decree and bring it down, or they will pay the fine.
We got time for one more question.
I'm going to ask a question based on something you said earlier about your ability to go in and inspect someone's station. I'm going to turn my question around earlier. Let's say it was McDonald's complaining about Amazon's frequency, and I have secure buildings where I don't let the public in or I don't let law enforcement in? What's my time frame to allow you access? Where's that rule and and how much? Can I put you on a list and get you 24 hours access, or have you got some?
Oh my
what's the
God,
rule?
you're picking on the new guy.
No, I'm just.
We like to work nice with people. So yeah, I mean, we understand security requirements. You see what we have to do down in D.C. Okay, but yeah, biggest thing is that we're federal agents, and a lot of people don't understand the dynamics we go on with it. I like to work with this, get this done, and I might not get access right away, but yeah, I like to get access. Sometimes we don't get access. Okay. So then we're going to find out who is ran by you and your boss and then explain the whole thing, the terror group is going on. But yeah, sometimes we have to wait, and that's just the way it is.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to know.
Yeah, sometimes we wait. But when I knock on someone's door, if I go to you as an amateur or whatever, and I knock on the door, I don't want you to look at my station. Okay. But you want me to look at it now, or you have to clean the house up before I get home? What do you mean? It's a skill. It's an interpersonal skill to talk about the whole thing. But we had times where we feel like pound sand, goodbye, okay. See ya. Yeah.
I mean, it's partly also going to depend on the case, if it's a jammer or a PSIX. But the bottom line is we're looking for compliance. You don't let us in, but the signal goes away, we're okay with that. We're going to come back and check and make sure that permanently goes away. But we do need that very. I mean, we have people that will not let us in, like you said.
Yeah, we had a case one time where a gentleman was using something, and no way, you can't, no way. I've been standing outside your house for an hour. I know it's you. No. And then 4 days later, hey, you come by and get it? Yeah, because look I'm not going to, we have avenues we can take when it comes to certain elements. If it becomes oh no, there's not a written time frame. We're just trying to get compliance. Some of our cases go on for a bit of a time, as you noticed about the 2-year stuff we had here.
But I think it's fair to say if it's PSX and it's in,
Yeah, that PSI would be on the spot. Look, we get this resolved. We had a GPS case one time. It was like, I'm not leaving till it gets turned off. Yeah, we sure have. Yeah, I'm not leaving because, yes, you picked out a new guy. I like that. Thank you. But no, it really matters about the casework and how serious it is. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to tell the Highway Patrol, the FAA, I'll come back in 3 weeks. No, I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Additional radiation, yeah. Well, both of them. There's been both of them, okay? So we had a case of a power company that had a problem with a system management system, and the planes were flying over like, well, we just lost our GPS. So we moved out there on a Friday afternoon, and we stayed for a couple hours and said, look, we're not leaving until it gets turned off, unplugged, cut out. Well, you don't have a right to transmit this. So they came on over, and they fired it really quick. So it's what belly button you push. And I'm not leaving until it gets removed because of safety of life and flight. So there's a priority, like my director was saying, there's a whole thing in here, but we take it serious enough out to go, hey, what's next? I'm not leaving.
And I mean, depending on it hasn't happened to me so far. I've been around the same time as Al, but we have the capability to call local law enforcement in and make that knock or whatever it is, if needed.
Oh yeah, we sure have. Yeah, they can do something called they can do stuff. So I ain't gonna get into it.
Thank you very much. All right, you guys. What? Yeah, I know. Hey guys, I think it's been 2 hours. Great show. Probably what we should do is wrap it up. I'd like to see if these guys have any quick final comments after all this. And I don't know how long these guys are going to stay, but if you guys have any quick final comments to go down the list here to give these guys whatever.
I'd only say that for the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, we are here as a resource. It's a non-government organization. We don't make the rules. We do advocate for rules. One example would be the person who said advanced class should become extra. That's something that you could talk to your representatives from the league about possibly having the league petition. I'm not sure there'd be a much appetite for that, knowing my colleagues on the 15-director board, and it's a voting board. But right now, we have a long-standing petition for technician enhancement petition. I forget what it's called, to give technicians digital rights. There was an argument that we should give them voice, single sideband rights. People are generally against that because a general class license has the rules that you need to study, because we're not going to change the technician exam. But that's the kind of thing that your representatives from the ARRL can help you with. You can file your own petitions. Typically, we're a little better at it, and that's what we do for members if you are a member. But generally, wrapping up, the ARRL is your organization for spectrum protection. That's number one. Antenna rights. That's number two. And RFI pollution that was talked about here. As a volunteer counsel myself, that's separate from being your representative as a director. I'll be getting a lot of calls for interference. That's more than the antenna rights calls that I get now. And that is that people turn on their HF radio and have a 20/9 across the whole spectrum, and it happens to be a fish pond pump 1,000 feet away. It came in from China, was, making all kinds of noise. We're getting a lot of those, and those are the three major issues that I see, challenges and existential threats to us. Spectrum, everybody wants our spectrum. You already know that. You heard about that. And it's getting worse than you think. Everybody is clamping down on antenna rights. It wasn't that way when I got licensed in the 60s or 70s. You can put anything the hell up you want it. Until the neighbors complain, you just told them to shut up. You can't do that now. And if you're an NHOA, we're working really hard and spending a lot of your favorite dollars trying to get legislation in Washington to give you the same rights for an antenna in an HOA that TV receivers have under the OTARD rules, over-the-air television reception, that you can put an antenna even if the HOA rules don't allow you. A lot of you may not deal with that because we have cable TV and fiber optics and so forth. And the last thing, of course, is keeping some suppression, keeping a hold on RFI problems, whether it's from solar panels, that's kind of under control, or all these other unintentional radiators that make your life miserable. It used to be it was only 5 feet away, it was a problem. Now it could be in the neighborhood and cause you not to be able to operate. I experienced some of that all the way up to 450 megahertz. But thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm going to stick around a little bit afterwards. Jeff?
I got one. The other thing I wanted to say was that amateur radio is somewhat unique in that the commission gives us a very loose framework as far as the rules that we have to operate within. And they do that because amateur radio is supposed to be self-policing. And a lot of what we do amongst our ranks is kind of look out for each other. If we see a problem, we notify whoever we're talking to. If they have sideband splatter, key clicks, they happen to be on the edge of the CW subband and they're talking phone, whatever it is, we're supposed to be self-policing in that regard. And these fine people to my right should be, I think, kind of our last line of defense. We should only turn to them when we've exhausted all of the other options and remedies available within our ranks, and do so for the better of the service in general. And I thank these guys here for their time. And I know I've worked with Dave for, 30 years probably. Whenever we first came to Philadelphia, we've been through a number of interference cases and in various services, and they've always been very good to work with, very fair, and very dedicated. So I wanted to thank them for coming. It's the first time I've ever been able to sit in a meeting like this with everyone together and hear their side of the story.
I'll just say on behalf of the FCC, thank you for the invite. This was incredible. We haven't done this for years, and we look forward to doing it a few more times, and maybe in some other communities too. Thanks for the invite.
When I finish, you can go home and tell your family you went to church on Thursday. But I just want to say you're sitting on billions and billions of dollars worth of spectrum. And you need to operate as if at the end of the day, it's all about amateur radio. And it may be that we have our spectrum because it's inherently unstable or nobody's thought of a use for it yet. But I remember being at the FCC when we laughed at people talking about the use of 800 megahertz. And years later, we were helping with multi-million-dollar auctions. So you need to operate as if you want amateur radio to last 100 years. I used to say 1,000, but even the planet won't be here then. I'd be happy with 1,000. But if you hear people that are an embarrassment, cut them loose, go somewhere else. Most of the problems on the amateur bands at HF can be solved just by turning the big knob. And you can go look at an Allied radio catalog from 1960, and you can look at a DX Engineering catalog from yesterday. Every radio in there has one big knob. It's an idiot filter. Just turn it. And then you don't hear them anymore. But the rest of the world has a saying about Americans. Americans will lose butt to save face. And I hear it on the frequencies all the time. Just don't go there. Right now, in our society is mean, it's rude, it's ungrateful. You see people arguing over a parking spot at Walmart when there's 100 parking spots available, and probably one of them pays $80 a month to go to the Y for exercise, but they want to park in front of the Walmart. It's just the way people are. There are people that I'm sure win the lottery and bitch about how it's paid out. They want it every 2 weeks instead of every month. It's just the way we are. Amateur radio is a pendulum, it's a cross-section of society, and that's been a plus for us. It isn't right now, so just don't be part of it.
All right, hey, real quick, I just want to thank you guys so much. It meant a lot to me, and I know you guys are busier than hell. If we could do this once a year, we're open for it. Anytime you want to get together and whatever you want to do, I got this. Jay's a good friend of mine. We can do this anytime we want. So, yeah, I'll buy this thing.
Tom, you got friends?
What?
You got friends?
No, I have a simple phrase. I hate everyone equally. So, but thank you so much. I mean, this is really big. And this crowd here, I really do appreciate every one of you guys coming. Go back to your club's group. I hope they answered all your questions, but now is the time to ask. Don't interpret it. These guys know what they're doing. Take this back and tell your guys, hey, we're doing it wrong. Fix it, whatever. That's what this meeting's about, what they do and what we need to do. And I had an eye-opening working with that guy right there for a year and a half because I have all the patience in the world. But we got through it, and now I learned how the cycle works, and you did a hell of a job. So any final questions? Because these guys got to roll. Oh, no problem, no problem. You just like all my nets, without you guys, we're not here. So you guys make this happen. Thank you so much, and these guys will do whatever they need to do.